Have you ever thought about starting up a business in resin-bound surfacing? Or perhaps even offering it as an option to your customers as part of your existing landscape business? Well, if it's something you've thought about, today I'm going to be sharing my top 5 key aspects of how to run a successful resin-bound installation business of the last 16 years. Now, 16 years ago, I was about 13 years of age, and whilst I had a hand at installing at the time, I certainly wasn't running the business by any stretch, although it would have been quite impressive if I was. So because of that, I've worked with the company owner Dave to put this video together to uncover all of the details on exactly how we did it, because if you get it wrong, it could cost you big time. Number 1, quality resin product. Think about resin-bound surfacing almost like baking a cake, and in this cake you have a number of different ingredients that quite literally go into a mixer. The ingredients that are mixed up are your resin, hardener, aggregates, and binding quartz. Now let me explain why it's important to have quality ingredients, starting off with your resin and hardener. And there's 2 core quality control components that I want to touch upon. Number 1, maintaining its natural color. With any resin-bound surface, you of course want that surface to maintain its natural color. The color that you show your customers in the showroom should be the color that you end up laying down on their driveway. However, this is where installers have 2 options: a UV stable resin or a non-UV stable resin. And here's the difference between the two, having been exposed to sunlight for just 2 weeks. The cheaper non-UV stable resin is discolored, no doubt leaving your customers dissatisfied with the product. That's why we always use the more expensive UV stable resin, where the stone maintains its natural color. You may just have to jet wash it every once in a while. Number 2, the 1-to-1 resin and hardener ratio. The next quality control measure is the ratio between resin and hardener, and unfortunately so many installers get this wrong. There's something called the Shore Strength test, and simplistically it measures the resistance to indentation of a surface. Now the hardener, funnily enough, is what gives the surface its strength, and when mixed with resin and deposited into a mix, it coats all of the individual stones together, creating a cross-link in the molecules at chemical level, bonding everything together. We also add binding quartz into this mix to increase the surface area of the bound aggregates, to create a more tightly bound and therefore stronger surface. Now, in order to achieve this optimal bond, we use a 1-to-1 resin and hardener ratio. This means for every 25 kilograms of resin that we use 25 kilograms of hardener. It's certainly more expensive, but it's the gold standard when it comes to resin-bound surfacing. It gives us and our customers confidence that our installs will certainly stand the test of time. If you don't do this and use a lower volume of hardener, which so many installers do, it could quite easily cause dented and damaged surfaces that could cost you big time. So don't cut corners on your ratios, because it could just destroy your business over the long term. Number 3, the aggregates. The final part to a quality mix is the quality of the aggregates that go into it. We source these from a local quarry who process the aggregates in their facilities and then distribute them to us, ensuring that they're both washed and dried, which is a critical step in providing a good quality product. Here are 2 different tubs of aggregates, one clean and ready for install, the other full of contaminants that could ruin your customer's surface. Now you can buy your washed and dried aggregates direct from us, and I'll leave a link to all of that down in the description below. But before we move on, one thing that I did want to touch upon is the importance of using dried aggregates before you put them into a mix. Naturally, as things go, sometimes your bags of stone can become wet or damp, but it's absolutely imperative that you don't use these bags, because when mixed with resin, the moisture could cause clouding, bubbles, blisters, or even cracks in a surface. But to summarize, we've always ensured that we've got our ingredients right, which has always left a happy smile on our customers' faces. Number 2, installing correctly. Now this video could be a whole video on itself and perhaps a little bit subjective too, but let me touch upon a couple of points that we think are best practice in the industry from our experience over the past 16 years that you could potentially use too. Any resin-bound surface is only as good as the base that it's laid on. After all, it's the foundation. It's the reason why we follow a very meticulous 5-step process, which includes a full dig out of the existing surface, a sub-base made up of geotextile membrane and a ground reinforcement grid, followed by MOT Type 1 hardcore, and then a base of Rhino rubber crumb to give us a strong and smooth surface to lay on. Now, following this process ensures that our surfaces are at minimal risk of damage as a result of ground movement, which unfortunately is extremely common if you simply just lay the resin-bound surface on top of the customer's existing surface. It's a real mistake that installers make, and trust me, myself and the team have seen some real shockers over the years. Now, the other point on delivering on a correct install is to ensure that the depth of the resin-bound mix is accurate. The absolute minimum for pedestrian grade traffic should be 3 times the maximum aggregate stone size plus 10%. Now, typically in a standard aggregates bag, that's a 5mm stone. So if my maths is correct, all surfaces should be laid at 16.5mm at an absolute bare minimum. Anything less than that, customers will likely experience issues over time. It's the reason why we've always laid at a 20mm depth. It's more than substantial to ensure maximum surface strength and resist breakages due to heavy vehicle traffic on a surface. Anything less than the minimum recommendations and you're asking for trouble. Number 3, customer service. We absolutely pride ourselves on our professionalism. So much so that we've been vetted by the government's trading standards buy with confidence scheme and being accredited with trading standards approval. This is as a result of demonstrating that we continue to operate at the highest levels of customer care and communication. We have before, during and after processes in order to ensure that we meet our customers' needs. It all starts with an inquiry and then followed up with a no obligation quotation from the company owner. We'll explain the process and what you can exactly expect from the team during installation, along with share sample case of our colours for the customer to pick their dream surface. We work with the customer then on their requirements, establishing the shape and design of the surface and start to measure up. A quote is then issued to the customer and then it's left in their hands to decide whether they want to proceed or not. If they do, then that's great, and if they don't, then that's fine too. We don't certainly push for a hard sale. Upon proceeding, we schedule our customers into our diary, giving them timelines for each stage of the process so we can manage their expectations along the way. It's then over to the install team who get to work on preparing the surface, always ensuring that customers' properties are kept clean, tidy and safe at all times, ensuring that the site is free from debris at the end of each day. Once the install has taken place, the customer is left to enjoy their surface, and this process has resulted in consistent 5-star feedback for the business. So I'll finish this section off with a quote that resonates with us. If you can manage to make a sale, you can make a living. But if you make an investment of time and good service in a customer, you can make a fortune. Number 4, collaborate, not compete. This one might sound a little bit counterintuitive on the surface of things, excuse the pun. But we've always found that it's far more empowering working with resin-bound installers and other people within the industry, as opposed to trying to aggressively compete with everybody. And the way we like to think about this is in the context of an up-the-chain and down-the-chain model, with Rhino sat in the middle. Up the chain, we have our supply partners in the form of industry-leading manufacturers of all kind of resin products and equipment, who we can of course work with to collectively share best practice, provide recommendations from an installer's perspective, along with obtain early information on recent industry developments in order to ensure that we stay on top of our game. But then down the chain, we have an ethos as a business to support the resin-bound installers around us in order to collectively raise the standards of the industry. It's the reason why we've become an approved franchisor and have provided training for many years. Due to this, it means that customers all around the country from all kind of installers can benefit from a product that's unmatched in terms of its characteristics. Some of those benefits being its environmental credentials, the fact that it's slip resistant, it's weed resistant, and it's permeable too. So by collectively working with our partners, we can strive towards increasing the standards within the industry, so customers all around the country can enjoy the product and the good quality workmanship that should go with it. Number 5, company evolution. When we started the business off back in 2008, things were tough.
Not a day. The UK's biggest banks are rescued by the British taxpayer. The world's central banks act together to slash interest rates. And yet the International Monetary Fund warns we're facing a major economic downturn.
Slap bang in the middle of the financial crisis, unemployment rates were up, and people certainly weren't splashing their cash on the latest resin-bound surface. As a result, like with any other business that's just started out, things did start a little bit slow. But as our reputation grew, so did the business. And we've gone on to be able to achieve average annual growth rates at a whopping 47% over the last 15 years. Now, on top of all of the things that we've already mentioned in this video, there are a couple of final points that I wanted to touch upon as to how we got to where we are today. The first one being ensuring that the business is growing, but not at a rate that's absolutely out of control. When the business first started, obviously money was tight. Every penny had to be accounted for and no money could be wasted. And because of that, it meant we had to start small too. An old pickup truck and an old lockup to store product and equipment was where it all began. But over time, we made progress. As the number of customers grew from positive word of mouth and from local advertising, we moved premises to bigger and bigger units, and our team grew too. We did all this in a sustainable way, reinvesting in the correct areas, but only once it was appropriate to make the next step to facilitate business growth. The second key thing being transitioning over time. It's important as a business that we didn't stand still. Fortunately, having built up a great reputation over time, we've been able to continue to serve the industry and the installers nationwide. This began by offering trade suppliers of our top quality products which we use on site, partnering with key industry manufacturers in order to pass savings on to installers. We also became leaders in resin-bound training, and more recently we've taken things to the next level and been accepted by the British Franchise Association as an approved franchisor, where if you would like further business support or training in resin-bound, then I'll leave a link to our franchise site down in the description below for you to check out. Or be sure to drop me an email if you have any other questions. And before you go, if you did enjoy this video, then be sure to subscribe to the channel. And if you are a little bit more curious on how to actually install the perfect resin bound surface, then be sure to check out that video next. With that being said, I'll see you over in the next one.